Church intro video. Church intro video. Church intro video. Church intro. That's when you normally come in. You didn't come in.
Oh, church intro video.
That was weird, homie. You didn't come in and you left
A
me
lot.
hanging.
I missed my intro. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I just blame you.
I failed you.
Yep. I think everyone's glad you're just even here, you know.
You think people are glad I'm here?
Uh-huh.
Oh. Okay.
I don't think they wanted another Gaming with the Pastors for Sunday night service.
Oh, why not?
Alright. I'm just making assumptions.
Gaming with the pastors is fun. Well, gaming with the pastor. The pastor. I think my microphone keeps drifting down.
Drifting down? Interesting.
Yeah, like it won't stay up. It keeps just kind of sagging, and I'm not sure which joint it is that's gotten loose.
The loose one.
The loose one.
I can almost
So helpful.
I can almost guarantee it's the loose one.
What's up, Biggs? Biggs is joining us on Twitch. All right. My goodness.
Yeah, that was loud.
Was it? I'm sorry. Try not to be so loud.
Well, you have to be loud
I'll
when you're
just whisper all night.
No, you will not.
No. We're gonna be doing this
Nope.
ASMR thing.
Nope.
Everything all night long. Just gonna whisper.
30-second buffer. 30-second buffer.
We're gonna be like, hello and welcome.
30-second buffer.
30-second buffer. 30 seconds. No. Am I gonna whisper tonight? All this wind lately, man. Has it been as windy in Tennessee as it's been here in Texas?
Yes.
Every day they're like, wind advisory. Getting so much wind. So sometimes during the countdown, we entertain ourselves so much that the countdown just flies by. And then sometimes during the countdown, we don't. And the countdown just lasts forever, man.
No, it lasts for 5 minutes.
Okay, yes, empirically, you're correct. It's 5 minutes either way. But it's like the whole watch pot never boils thing. Like, yeah, the water boils, obviously. But you've got that anticipation thing, you know?
Yeah.
They didn't have any of the 12-ounce cans of Monster at Walmart. And I was like, but how am I going to regulate how much I drink if I don't have if I have cans that are 4 ounces more than that.
You're just gonna have to actually
Semi-steady.
do it.
Gonna have to actually do
And
it.
we're face live, just so you know, because I didn't say anything. Yep.
Hello and welcome to the live recording of Season 4, Episode 5. Why was I reading that from Discord?
Yeah, why
we,
did you say
we don't
live
want the
recording? Because now
podcast
you
to go out
can't
with
use that
the
in the
live recording
podcast.
of.
Yeah, you should probably try that
Yeah.
again. And hope that I edit it right.
Right. Hello and welcome to Season 4, Episode 5 of the Berean Manifesto. Faith, hope, and love for the modern Christian. I'm Pastor Bill, and I am joined, as always, by Pastor Nooms. How you doing, Pastor Nooms? How was your week?
Week was pretty good.
Or 2 weeks, rather, I
2 weeks. Yeah, technically it was 2 weeks. So they were pretty good. I worked a lot, and I played some games. Nothing really of huge amounts of note.
This really ends up being your answer every week nowadays.
It's
I worked a lot and I played some games.
I don't I don't do a lot. That's the thing. Like I don't if it's up to me that'd be my answer all the time. Um but that's me at my happiest is I didn't do a lot. I worked a bunch and I played games. Like that that's that's my ideal weeks. When nothing
Yeah,
else big or weird happens. Now I can say that. You're not quite as lucky. You got very sick.
I did. I was so sick. Is your little window on the screen bigger than normal?
No?
Okay.
Why?
It feels intrusive. I feel like I should be
Well, that's where you
sitting
were.
over here.
That's where you were when we said all this.
Was it?
Uh-huh.
Way over here?
Which is why I asked you like
Like a foot away from the desk?
that's why I asked you like 2.5 weeks ago of did you move your camera and stuff? Because everything feels different. And you were like, no, it's the same. I was like, okay. That's why. Because it feels. Now, I will say, I think I had to unplug my camera and replug it in. So I think the zoom got changed slightly. So what you see of my room is bigger. So
It really is, yeah.
that might be why you feel like I'm bigger. Um, because I just noticed that as well is um, you can see a lot more of the couch and Kaiju's blanket and
It, is there any of me over here hanging off of
what do you mean hanging
the
off?
presentation screen in your computer, or are we butted right up against the edge of the camera?
Um, I don't know. I'll have to go into studio mode to check that. 1 second. Let me check. Bill Big
No,
Head.
I don't.
Bill Big Head. Unlock Bill Face. No, that's
No.
the edge.
Okay.
And studio mode is supposed to only change the one, and I just realized it doesn't. So yeah, no, there's nothing over there.
Okay.
Um,
Alrighty.
as I made everyone dizzy.
Right? Even me, I was like, woo, woo.
Well, and that's the thing. Studio mode is supposed to not do that. It's supposed to only edit the one side, but I guess because this one uses that one, that's not the case. So I was just looking at the studio mode, and then all of a sudden I noticed you're going. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
oops.
Oops.
So
That's funny.
yeah.
All right. Yeah, my week, my 2 weeks was rough. I was sick, and then I started having some serious pains, and went to the ER on Friday night of last week. And they said I was having some prostate problems and gave me some antibiotic, and I didn't really start feeling anywhere close to normal until probably last night. Um,
Yeah, because I
so
texted you a couple times this week of like, how you doing? Mm.
yeah, I was like, oh, I'm dead. Leave me alone. Let me die in peace.
And today you was like,
Um,
death did not win. And I'm like, okay, cool, let's do it.
it's not what I said. I said death will have to wait.
Same thing.
Yeah. So here we are. Um, but yeah, I had a pretty rough 2 weeks. Like I would, and as I was starting to get better, I would feel pretty good, and then I would do something like work on some laundry or walk the dog or drive the kids to school, and then I would just be straight out of commission for like the next 4 or 5 hours, and so it wasn't pleasant. Um, yeah. So anyway, that's how my 2 weeks were. Uh, and now it's time for getting to know the pastors. So, Pastor Nooms, if you can pull a card,
I don't want to. I wasn't prepared.
you you weren't prepared to pull one from
No.
the thing that's right there on your desk all the time.
Mm-mm.
Hmm.
And it's actually usually over here, but I moved it because I knew it was my week.
So you were prepared.
No. I'm never prepared to answer these questions. Almost everyone can recall a missed photo opportunity because he/she did not have a camera. What moment above all others you could think of do you wish you would have been able to catch on film?
I've had a camera in my hand since 2007. Most people have. I can't remember a time when I didn't have a camera in my hand to be able to just put and take a picture or a video. So that's pretty much my answer. Um,
I'm trying to
are you
think.
thinking
I
or
am. I was trying to think. I can think of a couple, but they're. If you could float in a hot air balloon over any city or place in the world, what would you choose to float over?
hmm, float in a hot air balloon?
Anywhere in the world. Where would you want to be
Anywhere
floating?
in the world. Do you have an answer?
Um,
While I'm trying to think of one.
I think if I had to choose to float over anywhere in the world, it would have to be somewhere like I would love to float over. I, see, the problem is I'm such a particular person. I'm like, I would love to float over the jungles of such and such, and I'm like, it's hot. Or maybe
But even
the
then,
desert of
it would
no,
just
it's
be a
hot.
canopy of trees, right?
And maybe the mountains of the no, it'd be cold. But what about the no? It'd be the wrong humidity level. So pro, to be honest,
So
probably
you've just
like
got the weather ruining your plans
I
left, right,
do,
and center,
I
huh?
do, and the idea of being in a hot air balloon turns my stomach in so many ways because of my height issues and equilibrium issues. Um, but
My beautiful balloon.
I would think one of the two mountain ranges, either the Smokies or the, you know.
One of the two. I was like, there's more than two mountain ranges, bruh.
Well, I mean like either the Smokies or the
Appalachian.
Appalachians. They're both, they're somewhere over here because it's such a pretty view from the ground. I would love to see it from the air, which I did when I was super super young. Um, I was in a helicopter over. over in like the Pigeon Forge area and did the whole like helicopter tour way up. Um, but I don't remember it at all. I remember the memory of going onto the helicopter, and I remember I have pictures of us after the helicopter, but I don't remember most of that trip because I was so young. Um, but yeah, it was with my grandma and great grandma. And I don't remember it, but I have done it. And so I think that's what I would want to do again because I haven't done it. And I think maybe a balloon would be slow enough that I wouldn't get sick. Um, maybe. Maybe. But yes, as
Okay.
Zadie says, the weather messes up my plans daily. I have been in so much pain over the last 2 weeks while this weather systems can't decide whether it should be 30 or 60. Um,
Hmm.
my
Back and forth and
my
back and forth.
joints are just hating every moment of it. Because like it was like 30 yesterday, and it's supposed to be the high today was 50 something, and tomorrow the high's 50 and the low is 50 something, and you're just like, come on, just make up your mind. It's January. Like we were one day away from having a white Christmas. Why is it 60 degrees? Like um, so yeah. What about you?
So I can think of I've thought of three places. There's the Ireland. I wouldn't mind
Mm.
hot air ballooning over Ireland.
Mhm.
Or the cliffs of Dover in England, or the shores of Djibouti, right there in the Horn of Africa. They've got,
Mm.
right where the desert meets the um, civilization, and also there's some jungly type there, and there's some beautiful beaches right in that area. That would be a really fun place to have a hot air balloon ride. So
Aren't they having issues over there with the Sahara creeping, like expanding?
the Sahara is doing a lot of weird things. A few weeks ago, they got like a foot of snow in the desert in the middle of the day. It was over 100 degrees and snowing at the same time. Um, yeah, there's a lot of weird things going on in the Sahara Desert right now. So
Well, it needs to figure out what it's supposed to be doing.
it needs to figure out it also needs to figure out what it's gonna do. Yeah,
Yeah, it needs to make its decision on what it's wanting to look like.
because depending on how it is in the Sahara Desert right now, largely influences how mild or how intense the summer is here in the central United States. Um, because if enough dust gets blown up and it comes across, it fights with that, the current, and then influences the weather here. But so yeah,
Mm. Mm.
are you looking up the snow?
No,
Oh, what are you looking up?
nothing.
Uh-huh.
Just the Sahara. Um,
You were doing something on your computer.
you're doing something.
I am doing something. I'm having a podcast.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know. I'm part
Okay.
of it.
So we've been in this series where we've been going through the beginning of Genesis, and then we took a week where we went through some stuff there in the beginning. See, now I know you're on your computer because your face is all lit up.
It's a white website. Why are websites ever white? Ugh.
We went through some stuff in the beginning of John, right?
Mhm.
And we talked about the word, or as a lot of theologians, well, I don't want to say a lot of theologians, but my commentaries at least thought it was more aptly translated as plan, purpose, um, motive, which is my favorite, has always been my favorite translation of the word that they translated to word in the beginning of John. In the beginning was the motive, and the motive was with God. The motive was God, because it makes more sense that way. Because the whole thing is about um, what motivated God to create, what pushed God, what was part of the creation. And so to reframe the narrative, the English narrative of the Word, and the Word was with, and the Word was, to then look at it as, oh, well, it actually is represented as a part of God in a very relatable way, right? Like we have motives, we do things because we have a motive. We don't just randomly do something. We're driven to do something, and so we understand that. We understand that part of God, and so we've gone all the way from Genesis 1:1 through Genesis 1:5,
Mm-hmm.
which brings us to the beginning of Genesis 1:6, right? Because 6 comes after 5. Pretty
Typically.
simple math there.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, typically 6 comes after 5. Okay, and so in the CSB, Genesis 1:6 is, then God said, let there be an expanse between the waters, separating water from water. Now, the King James Version says firmament, not expanse. Firmament. And that word firmament, it's a difficult one to explain. It sounds like nonsense, really. The word itself sounds like they were just like, let's just make up a word and throw it in there because it doesn't really even match what's being said to use the word firmament,
I
right?
think I
I've
think it's
never
one of those
understood the choice there.
I think it's one of those connotations versus dictions where at the time it made sense to them, but for us we're like we don't it doesn't make any sense. The diction doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
The there has to be a reason, but it don't make no sense.
Now, there has to be a reason that they chose the word firmament in the King James, but I don't know what it was. Okay, so when we come across 1:6, we've been breaking these down word by word, right? So the first word there is Elohim, H430, which we've talked about is the plural for God. So it's gods. So that we also talked about that could be celestial beings, that could be that word could mean any host of things. The writer is not necessarily calling out God that we think of as God, God the Father, Jehovah, but rather recommunicating the story as told to them by another culture, right? So basically, that whole first book of Genesis, whole first chapter of Genesis, we talked about it, wasn't part of the narrative for the Jews, wasn't part of their history until after they went into captivity in Babylon. And while they were there, they learned these details about the creation that then they added as a new beginning to the creation story. Originally, their creation story started at what we call Genesis chapter 2. So we're still in this area where we're retelling a story, not making a claim on it as being, oh, well, this is point blank the Jewish God, but subjectively saying, well, this is a story of creation as told to us and staying true to that form, right? And it's in this, I said right. I told you the other day I was going to stop saying right in this podcast, and you haven't called me out. I noticed
I
since I
don't
said that, not once.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't notice when you say right.
You don't notice it?
No,
It drives me
because you
nuts
use
when I'm
it
trying. Man,
as a punctuation point. So
I
I
do.
just
It's like a punctuation mark, and I say it so often. I'm working on the transcription, and I'm like, oh, I said right again. I'm deleting all the rights. I'm like, these are annoying.
why are
Who
you
talks
deleting
like
them when you
this?
set them?
Because I want somebody to be able to read it and not hit a speed bump of the word right in the middle of a sentence and go, what was
Mm,
that for? Okay.
we're so different when we do the transcript. I'm like text, yay.
Okay. All right.
Talking about speed bumps.
So, all right. Okay. So there's the word gods, and then we get Almar, H559. Now, this word can mean several different things. It can be to say, it can be answer, appoint, avouch, bid, boast, boast, self, call, certify, challenge, charge. But in this particular instance, I think in the context of what we're reading, the best translation there would actually be commanded. It wasn't that God said, let there be an expanse between the waters, as some out of pocket abstract idea, right? God was commanding that it needed to be done. God was giving a command. He was commanding, let there be an expanse between the waters, separating water from water. And then um, when we look at what he's actually saying there, the let there be is Haya, H 1961, which means exist or to exist. And then we get to this word that they translated as firmament, right? Ra, I said right again. Rakia. Rakia. It's H7549 if you're following along in your Strong's Thesaurus, which would mean a lot of pausing and going back and forth. But if you're doing that, that's cool.
Unless you have eSword open.
Unless you have eSword open and you're following along in real time. eSword brought to you by that guy that makes it. I
Yeah,
don't remember.
brought to you by eSword.
Brought to you by eSword. This has been an unpaid plug for eSword.
Well, I,
The sword of the Lord with an electronic edge.
why would you need a paid one? It's a free service.
Right?
Anyway,
Unless you're trying to get it for iPad, and then you have to pay for it, or iMac. All
yeah,
right.
that's your friends over there's licensing.
Well, you
That's
can get it on your phone for free.
that's your people's
You just
licensing.
can't get it on iPad or iMac.
Yeah, that's licensing. I'm telling you. we
Rakia.
Yep, Rick
Okay.
Myers.
Visible arch of the sky. Okay. Visible arch of the sky. And the King James translators, for some reason, went firmament. Visible arch of the sky. Okay. So most of my commentaries, because I try to keep an open mind, because I already know what I believe about what this is and how it played into the future and what happened here. But I don't want to teach from that point of view, and I don't want to lead Bereans down a path of, well, I already made up my mind, so this is what it is. I want to give you the tools to then go and be Berean for yourself and figure out what you believe the word is saying and what you believe, happened. All right, so most of my commentaries um, talked about this visible arch of the sky as simply being the atmosphere between the ground and the cloud layer. So they were saying that it's basically just God was creating the atmosphere and all the waters that it's now that it talks about right after that, separating water from water. Um, that it was talking about separating the water below from just the cloud layer, from where evaporated water collects before it then eventually rains back down. Now, Dr. Carl Baugh of the Creation Museum believes that the firmament was a literal hard shell that held actual water, like lots and lots and lots of water above it, that it sat that way, and the light from the sun and light from the stars would shine through that water and through the firmament, and it would change the light, and it had all kinds of benefits for the people on the earth. The theory then is that when it came time for the flood, that an asteroid came and broke that firmament and released the floodgates of heaven, as it talks about later in Genesis when the flood happens, and allowed that all that water that was separated to come down onto the earth from up above. And so that's his take on it. So you can think about it as just the atmosphere and being clouds above the atmosphere, and then the water below that God's about to call land up from. Or you can go look into what Carl Boss says it is and research out why he says it is and what he thinks that kind of world would have looked like. Um, his website is creationevidence.org. And I think they do a really good job of presenting a lot of scientific evidence behind their conclusions, not necessarily hard uh, created facts at that point, because science is like that. You put up a bunch of evidence, and then it's either enough that it becomes fact, or it's unreproducible and it remains a theory, right? Like we have the theory of gravity, and people are like, "Oh, you're being diminutive to gravity. You're saying gravity doesn't exist because you're calling it a theory." No, I'm saying we don't have the ability to create something that creates gravity, so it's unreproducible. I'm not saying it's not real. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm not saying you can't show that it exists. I'm saying you can't reproduce it. You can't reproduce gravity, therefore, it's not a fact. It's a theory. You have a theory about what it is. You can't say you know where it comes from. You can't say you know how it's created, and you can't reproduce it. So it's not fact. It's still considered a theory. It's not a bad thing. You're not saying it doesn't exist when you say something's a theory. You're just saying it's not reproducible. Now, the moment we can create artificial gravity, it will become a fact instead of a theory. And that's fine. But as of right now, we don't know. We don't know how to create gravity. So it's not reproducible. Okay.
And then there are some people who believe that the firmament and the waters are including the heavens and the stars. Which that one to me is scary and weird to think about, that there's water on the edges of the universe that's ever expanding. Um, that's a little freaky. Um, but there are some commentaries and some people who that's what they mean. That's what they say when the firmament
I
is
think I remember
all
reading
the way
about
up,
that. Like,
and it's like,
I thought they thought that everything in space was water and like the stars were in water.
there are there are there
Not that
was
water was beyond space, but like all space is like just a giant ocean.
there are people who believed, and who knows, people might still, I don't know, people are weird, that space is just another ocean.
You'd
um
think with just modern, I mean,
yeah, we kind of know that
even
that one's not true, but
even with this like low power um pirate style telescope,
yeah,
I can look into space
yeah,
and see
yep,
in great detail the
yep,
moon and
which you
tell
would
you
not be able
I
to
can even
do.
see Mars with this and confirm for you that's not ocean out there.
Yeah, you would not be able to do so if it was
Yeah.
ocean particles. But that's one of those things about some of the older commentaries is, well, they're old. Um,
Yeah, they're old.
so some of the beliefs in them are outdated and have been proved inaccurate.
Right.
Um,
Well, that's the thing is when you try to incorporate science, secular science into your religious texts and try to go, oh, you see, this is where science and religion, they meet. Well, yeah, I see that you're trying to reach across the proverbial aisle there, but science changes as we learn new things. Even revelations change of what scriptures mean as we learn new things.
yeah.
So, it's not something you can do because, like now, we're 100, 200 years out from whatever commentary said that. And we're just laughing. Like, that's a ridiculous concept that they would put that in that commentary.
And to me, even with the world of science as it was then, it's a little ridiculous. We have some
It,
people
it might
who
have been. Yeah, it might have already been a ridiculous statement.
we have a lot of people who believe ridiculous things just because they have been taught it, as opposed to using their, there are people who, science deniers, medical deny, people who, that's all, that's all hooey, and you're like, well, it is it like, um, we saw a lot of
How
that.
much of it is hooey, and how much of it is God inspired to help you?
Yeah, there's
Antibiotics? I'm gonna put that down as God inspired.
there's a there's an
Uh,
interesting little comic, and it's someone gets to heaven and they're like, why didn't you save me? And it's like, well, I sent you people to tell you not to do it. Then I sent you doctors to help you through it. Then I sent you, da 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 da, and you just kept praying, and I kept sending things, and
and I kept
you
sending help, and
didn't
you kept
listen.
turning them away.
Um,
Yeah.
and there's another same comic around the, person on top of their roof because they wouldn't take the lifeboats. And like Big said, the world is flat. We're actually a disc. We have a dome over us, and that's where the water is, and everything's just painted onto the dome, and those people are fun. Until you get into a real life, face to face argument with a flat Earth person, I don't think you've actually enjoyed life, because that is just fun. I worked with someone
I
who
don't
truly
understand.
believed it, and it
I don't.
was
I don't understand
fun.
arguments like that. Like two people getting into an argument about something that neither one of them has concrete proof about. They're just arguing information they've taken from other people and gone, well, I've chosen to trust this information.
Yeah,
Like,
and
neither one of you have gotten out of the atmosphere and looked back and know for sure, but you're just fighting tooth and nail about information that you got from someone else and just swear it's got to be the truth.
and what's really fun is when people argue these types of facts, and they argue them as an argument, like truly angry, truly, you know, and someone like myself, I'm like, I might get in an argument, but on the same token, I also might be arguing with you just for the fun of it, and
Yeah, you do that.
I'm actually having a good old time. Um, and that was one of those because I'm like, this is so nonsensical that, um, you know, we might as well be talking about the fact that the Earth is on the back of a turtle floating through an ocean. I mean, that's a belief that people
Oh,
had.
have you seen that movie Strange World on Disney?
I have not watched Strange World.
So it ends the movie like that. They pan out from everything that's been going on and show you that the whole civilization the whole movie has been in is actually inside of a mountain range on the back of a giant turtle floating through an ocean planet on top of a turtle. And so it's like, oh man, that's funny.
Yeah. Yep.
It's a good movie. I know some people discounted it because there is one character who is a teenager who has a romantic interest in a boy who has a romantic interest in a boy, and people gave it a hard time. They were like, "How dare you make a movie where the leading character is openly gay?" Okay, it's actually a great movie, and any gayness was kept to a level of like secondary to the story in any way possible, like just fleshing out the characters and making them seem like real people was the only times it came up. And it was like, I don't understand. It was just because it was there,
Yeah.
people threw a fit. And I'm like, hmm, missing out on a really good movie if that's the reason why you didn't let yourself enjoy the movie.
There are definitely
Oh.
times where people take certain things too far. Um,
And now I do want to say I did enjoy that they didn't make the gay character a big old flippin' loon like in the live action Disney's Beauty and the Beast, where Gaston's, what's his name? His assistant,
Lefru, Lefru.
Lefru.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever his name is, Lefru. They made him a big old laughing stock in that live action movie, the
Well,
only gay character.
I mean,
And I was like,
he was
oh,
he was
that's
kind
not good
of. It's not good
representation.
representation, but he was a laughing stock in the cartoon also.
They made him worse in the live action
I
remake.
don't
They really did.
I don't know about that. I think
Yeah,
people
it was
gave him
pretty
too
bad.
much of a hard time on that one. I do agree that when you do representation in movies and such, it should be done decently and not
I,
super stereotypical, and sadly often it is. Um,
it throws me out of the narrative when either all the characters are straight, an unnormal amount of people are LGBTQ, an unnormal amount of people are white, or an unnormal amount of people are black. It pulls me right out of the story. I'm like, this is not what the real world looks like. It just doesn't. It doesn't look like that. It comes in multiple colors and shapes and sizes. And one of the things that always used to pull me out of movies was perfect teeth.
mm,
Like I'd be watching a
mm-hmm.
movie and then you'd see some guy that's supposedly homeless and he's got these perfect teeth. And I'm like,
Or
oh
nice
my gosh.
shoes. Nice
Can't
shoes
even,
also do
yeah,
that.
it's crazy.
When a costume department doesn't do a good job with the wardrobe, and you're like, "That's a $700 jacket on that homeless person," and it's
Yeah.
just it's unrealistic. But that's
Anyway,
beside the point. The firmament is a funny word.
the firmament. It's a funny word. Um, and regardless of what you believe about it, um, it doesn't play a massive part in anything else in the Bible, um, outside of maybe the flood, if you believe the way that Karl Ba does. Now, some have looked at the words of Elihu I think it's Elihu, in the book of Job, where um, he's challenging Job and he says, were you there when God cast the arch of the sky as hard as that looks as hard as molten glass? And some have said, well, you see, there was the firmament right there in the book of Job, but not really. He's saying it looks like it. He doesn't say it is, right? He just says, when I look up at the arch of the sky, it looks unchanging. It looks like the arch is just, it's there. You can't change that thing. It looks as hard as metal. It's just there. Um, so really, the firmament doesn't really come up again. But if we want to go back to verse 6 of chapter 1 here, this next, sorry, the next word there, between, this is H8432 in the Strongs. And it is, goodness, the word tavek. Now, tavek is to cut something down the center, right? Like either you're taking gosh, the first analogy that came to mind was you take a chicken breast and you cut it down the center to then lay it out like a butterfly to butterfly a chicken breast, so that you have that more flat surface, and then you pound it, to make the whole flat chicken breast for making like chicken parmesan. That's the idea. There is cut it down the center to make it into to flip that open into two separate pieces, and then that the next word there, waters. That's the same word we've been using through all of Genesis 1 for water. Um, and it's still not clear here if the writer is intending the idea that we picked up earlier about primordial ooze, right? About um, all the building blocks for cellular life and all of this being there, or if they literally mean in the traditional sense that we think of as water, right? We don't know at this point. we can assume they mean normal water, but there's no like real information here that would lead us to make that jump other than our concept of water and assuming that the story is talking about our concept. But our concept is several thousand years separated and multiple cultures away
Mm-hmm.
from where the story came from. So
Right.
we don't know. And then is Badal Bane. Okay. 2 words, Badal Bane. It's H914 and H996. And it is translated in the CSB as separating, or in the KJV as divide. Okay. And when you say Badal Bane, you're saying I'm not only separating the two in reality, I'm not just going and moving them away from each other. I'm also in concept saying those are two different things. So I'm looking at it and going, those aren't the same thing at all. Those are two separate things. And I'm also physically separating them to match that they're two separate things. Like taking a bag of M&Ms and separating out the colors one by one, like some people do. They're like, no, I got to separate out the colors. I eat all this color first, and I eat all this color first. They believe there's a difference. And so then they act out that difference and separate them out. Now, a sane person just eats their M&Ms. There's no real difference in the colors. There's literally no taste difference in the colors
There
other
is.
than your own perception.
No, there is.
It's just your perception, bro.
The dyes taste different. On a
The
monet.
dyes
Yeah.
do not have a taste.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do. Water has taste. Dye has taste. Everything has taste. It just depends on how unique your palate is. The dyes have taste.
Methane gas has no taste or smell. They have to add taste and smell to it so that you'll know it's there before it kills you.
I'm aware.
Not
It's
everything has taste.
everything has taste. Just because we can't
No, it
perceive
doesn't.
it, not everyone can perceive it, does not mean it is not there. You know I'm right on that
Moving on.
point.
Yeah, if you're some kind of biological mutated freak, you can taste the difference between your M&Ms. There, is
Thank
that
you.
better? All right. And then the text just says the word water twice. It says Badal Bain Mayim Mayim. So believing and separating out the difference between water and water. It just uses the same word twice. And we still don't know. Are those the word for primordial ooze? Or are they saying he separated the primordial ooze from traditional water? Or are we saying they're both traditional water? No clue. We don't know. We don't know what they're actually saying there, right? And so then we get to verse 7. So in verse 6, God commands that it be done. And then in verse 7, God does it. He commands it and then he does it, right? So God made the expanse and separated the water under the expanse from the water above the expanse. And it was so. So contextually, God gives a command to God, and God then does the command for God, which makes no sense in the singular, but in the plural, it makes all kinds of sense with the way they were writing it and the way they intended it to be poetic. It makes all kinds of sense. But if you're thinking in the singular of, well, this is Jehovah, this is the Elohim that is the one true God, it doesn't make sense in that framing. Um, to have God command it and then have God carry it out. Okay. And there's nothing in verse 7 verbally that is any different than the verbiage that was used in verse 6 or any weird words or gotchas. I went through every word and made sure that it was all just straightforward and things we had already talked about, expanse and firmament and separated and water and all of that is just all the things we already talked about. Now we get to verse 8. Yeah, we got 10 minutes. We can do verse 8. Genesis 1:8 in the CSB says, God called the expanse sky. Evening came, and then morning, the second day. And the King James Version says, and God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. Okay, we've got a little bit of a difference there, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
One said sky, another one said heaven. So in the Hebrew there, that is shamayim, or you can say shameh. And the actual, I'm going to have to expand my eSword here a little bit. The actual translation is to be lofty. And the most common usage is the sky. And I'm going to read just right here from the Strongs.
Mm-hmm.
The dual perhaps alluding to the visible arch in which the clouds move, as well as to the higher ether where the celestial bodies revolve. Air, um, the domain of astrology, or the heavens, right? So when the King James says the firmament, heaven, they are in actuality not translating there, but they are teaching there. The translator is going a step further and going, well, I'm just going to tell you what this is heaven. And instead of just translating the word that's there and saying heavens or sky, or something along those lines, the translator has gone a step further and is now interpreting the scripture as well there in the King James, instead of translating and then letting the reader or the Holy Spirit or a pastor or whatever do the actual interpreting of the words there. 720.
3.
Yeah. Genesis 1:9. Unless you have something you want to add right quick before we go on to
No.
1:9. All right. Genesis 1:9. Then God said, let the water under the sky be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. So we have the same plural word for God there, Elohim, gods. And then we have said, which is more commanded, just like before. And then we have the same word for water, which we still don't know if we're dealing with primordial ooze or if we're dealing with what we think of as water. And then we have under, right? Under? Yes, under, which is two words, H4480 and H8478, which is technically put together to mean a part of the under part. So under's right. It's just it's more of a complex word, and under actually doesn't do a bad job of narrowing down the complexity of the word. And then we've got the word for sky again, which King James then again translated as heaven, but this time with a lowercase h instead of an uppercase h. Because this time they've decided just to translate it, not interpret it for you. And then we have the word together. Together with, that's H413 with, and then as one, and then we get H4725, which is translated as place, in the King James. I've lost my place. Also, place in the CSB. But more accurately, that's standing on a spot. So it's not necessarily a place like we would think of as a drawn out, place, but standing in a particular spot. You have these borders.
Here's the
You
spot
cannot go
where they
beyond these
connect.
borders. Right. And then it says, and let dry ground appear. Now, the word dry there, Rabashah, H3004, is more the idea of dried out or withered. It comes from H3001. So it is dry ground, but it's an evolution of the word that means to dry out. So it wasn't necessarily just that dry ground just appeared. It was that the water receded and then the ground that was left dried up. It evaporated. All the water evaporated out of the dirt and it became dry ground. Um, and it was so, or sorry, dry land appear, which is to be seen, let the dry land be seen. And it was so. So we've got H 1961 is to exist, which they translated as was. And then so there, H 3651. This is not so. This is not, you know, and it happened. This is, and it was righteous. It was justice. It was the right thing. It was reality. It's not just, oh, it happened, which is the way we use that in the modern vernacular. It became a law, basically, that there would be dry ground, is the idea in using that word. Is this is a permanent law now that there would be this land, that there would be
Mm-hmm.
land on Earth. And that's definitely all the time we have for
Mm-hmm.
tonight. So I guess next week we'll pick up in verse 10 and we'll move forward from there. But yeah, so you remember in school, I don't know, there's this Mandela that's surrounding this particular issue. When you were in school, do you remember being taught about Pangea?
Yes.
All right. So about half of people, maybe it's not exactly half, but about half of people remember being taught Pangea as a fact, right? That all the land masses on Earth were once one landmass, which lines up with the biblical account here, and that it was called, well, and that we've named it Pangea, and that if you move all the pieces, in a certain way, they all kind of fit back together, and we can see, and we can envision some erosion, but basically they fit back together. And then there's about half, and I said it's probably not exactly half, but there's about half of people that remember being taught the theory of continental drift. That there is a minor theory that is basically laughable, that all of the continents used to be closer, possibly in one continent, and that they drifted away from each other, and that it was a laughable thing. And so it's this weird thing. And I like to follow Mandela's, but there's this one lady um, who, um, for some reason, had talked about Pangea with her husband in the past. And then at one morning, they both woke up and they were talking about something from high school, and the topic came up again. And suddenly he remembered it as being the theory of continental drift instead of Pangea. And it was this whole weird thing about um, them making fun of some guy in his class for believing in Pangea when the teacher was teaching continental drift. And she was like, no, we've talked about this story before. She was teaching you guys all believed in Pangea. And that's not how it happened at all. But I don't know, it's a weird thing. But I remember being taught that there was one landmass and that, scientists retroactively called it Pangea. But not everyone remembers being taught that way.
I think it's just bad schools in that one.
I think it's just bad schools.
Yeah.
Biggs, you've been active on chat tonight on Twitch. Do you remember if you were taught Pangea or the theory of continental drift?
So Biggs is so
One or the other?
old. I think he was actually around for it.
Was he?
Yeah, because he had a birthday 2 weeks ago. Let's just point that out.
I know. I
To
put in the
which,
chat here
to
back
which,
then.
my 10-year-old at his birthday dinner repeated something I said, and it was funny. But I call him old man.
Yeah.
And she said I'm no longer allowed to do that because now it's elder abuse.
Ah, wow. And
Yeah.
see, Biggs remembers being taught the theory of continental drift. Um, yeah. So I was taught, Pangea, and then um, you get to the flood, you get after the flood, and you read through all this stuff, and then there's this curious note about the time of Peleg,
Mhm.
because that's when the world was world was divided, and you're like, oh, okay,
The
or
person who
whatever it
came
says.
up
What does it
with the
say?
theory, um, it was documented in 1912 in The Origin of Continents. Um, but yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, Genesis chapter 10, verse 25. Um, Peleg, one of the sons of Eber, so called because in his days was the earth divided.
Mhm. Mhm.
All right,
I think that's all we have for tonight.
right. So this podcast comes out every Wednesday night on the weeks that we record it at 6:30, no, at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, wherever you get your podcasts. And we do record it on Sunday nights at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time on the weeks when I'm not sick or Nooms isn't sick or we don't take a family holiday time from recording it. But if you want to find out where we record these episodes, or rather, I mean, I record mine from my bedroom, this little space in my office in my bedroom, and he records his from his office in his house in Tennessee, and I'm in Texas. But if you want to find out where you can watch live
And
and
interact like
participate
Biggs
on the
does,
chat,
and Zadie.
interact like Biggs does, then you can go to our website, ekk.house, and you can find out which Twitch, which YouTube, and which Facebook to go to watch live and to interact live and be a part of what we're doing here on Sunday nights.
Mhm.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed tonight and got something out of it. I know um, these verses aren't quite as deep and as fun as the beginning of Genesis, but um, it's good to go through them and make sure that we're not missing anything, right? You don't want to just glaze over it again and miss something important, like we were talking about with Genesis 1:1. So many people just glaze over it, and there's so much depth in the words used and in the implications of the way they frame those statements.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, so that's definitely all we have. I love you guys. I hope you have a great week,
Be safe out there.
and until next time. And now, for our live audiences, straight from my bedroom studio to you,
Mm-mm.
we do this thing where we have to sing us a little song. And our
Well,
guest
well.
tonight,
Let's be clear. Let's be clear.
joining us to sing the song,
Let's be clear.
Adeline Shea.
We don't have to sing the song. We have to have a buffer, and it's become a singing of the song. And now I can't not do it. But that's beside the point.
Are you ready, Adeline?
Yeah.
30-second buffer.
30-second
buffer.
30-second buffer.
Has it been 30 seconds yet? Nope. That's not how time works, girl. 30-second buffer. 30-second buffer. 30-second buffer. All right, that's enough.
I pressed the buttons. Goodbye.